Videos prepared by our team, including the latest developments and special reports on the war in Israel. You can subscribe to our channel, like our videos, and click the super thanks button below. The defenders of Zion continue their efforts to limit the activities of the Hamas terrorist organization in the strip that stretches from the Rafah border crossing through Gaza City, Sderot, Ashkelon, and Ashdod to Tel Aviv and Haifa. In these areas, as well as in East Jerusalem, there are occasional clashes between Hamas and the Israeli army. But the most critical area for both Hamas and Israel today is still the Gaza Strip. Israel has Gaza under siege, with dozens of tank units, armored vehicles, and special forces. But Hamas rocket attacks continue to respond to the blockade. Hamas's alleged Iranian-backed arms supply through Egypt has led to an increase in terrorist activity in Gaza, which Israel is determined to tackle once and for all. For this reason, the Israeli armed forces are preparing for ground attacks in the Gaza Strip, while at the same time imposing a complete blockade on the targets of the Hamas terrorist organization from the eastern Mediterranean coast. The Israeli Navy used attack boats to neutralize a large number of Hamas militants off the coast of the Gaza Strip today. Footage of these attacks was posted on social media. More than 30 Hamas terrorists were killed during firing from Israeli attack boats. The terror group was reportedly trying to reach Ashkelon. A few days earlier, the Israeli Navy had carried out an operation to destroy Hamas terror sources and ammunition depots in the Gaza Strip. But in this operation, a large terrorist group, including a large number of divers belonging to Hamas, was destroyed. The presence of the USS Gerald Ford aircraft carrier and the USS Dwight D. Eisenhower carrier strike group, the second U.S. Navy vessel to arrive in the eastern Mediterranean, are also crucial for the security of these operations. Washington sources claim that these two ships are working to identify targets belonging to the Hamas terrorist group and to provide Israel with intelligence. As a result of this joint work, the Israeli naval forces have also clamped down on Hamas's attacks from the sea. Faced with a massive blockade both on land and at sea in the Gaza Strip, Hamas has now called on residents of Gaza to refrain from traveling south of the city. According to the IDF, this call was seen as an attempt by Hamas to use civilians as human shields. However, in its latest assessment of the situation, the Israeli military reported that at least 600,000 residents of northern Gaza fled to the south, following Israel's evacuation announcement. More than half of the territory's population is estimated at 1.1 million. The remainder are said to be slowly pouring into southern Gaza. More than 600 U.S. citizens are also estimated to be in Gaza. Most recently, the United States was working with Egypt to open the Rafah border crossing. But despite assurances from senior U.S. officials that Egypt had agreed to open the Rafah crossing for some 600 Palestinian Americans seeking to flee Gaza, recent reports indicate that the border crossing remains closed. The United States of America was not the only country affected by what was happening in Gaza. On a solidarity visit to Israel, French Foreign Minister Catherine Colonna reported that 19 French citizens had been killed by Hamas and 13 others were missing. Speaking at Ben Gurion International Airport, Minister Colonna said that at least some of the missing were surely being held hostage by Hamas in Gaza. In this regard, the members of the Council of the European Union issued a joint statement calling on Hamas to immediately release all hostages without preconditions. Meanwhile, in Gaza, efforts are underway to meet the humanitarian needs of residents ahead of the Israeli ground offensive. Israeli Energy Minister Israel Katz announced the partial restoration of water access to southern Gaza, and the Israeli Foreign Ministry confirmed that water has been restored. Security sources claim that Israel usually supplies 20% of Gaza's water consumption. Still, with the power cut, Gaza will struggle to run its own water pumps. While the Gaza Strip continues to suffer from Hamas attacks, Israel's northern lines are also in turmoil. The Israeli army reported that the IDF struck Hezbollah positions after 9 rockets were fired from Lebanese territory. The Galilee Medical Center said 8 people were wounded, 2 of them seriously. Earlier in the day, a rocket hit the village of Shatula near the border, killing one person and wounding 3 others. Hezbollah's Al-Manar television source then reported that the Iranian-backed party had claimed responsibility for the attack. Over the past 2 days, Hezbollah has announced several attacks on an Israeli outpost and a settlement near the Lebanese border. Following this escalation between the Israeli armed forces and the Hezbollah terrorist organization, Iran has warned that Israel's ground offensive in the Gaza Strip could escalate clashes elsewhere in the Middle East. Foreign Minister Hossein Amir Abdullahian met with the Emir of Qatar, Sheikh Tamim bin Hamad Al Thani, as Israeli troops massed on the border. The Israeli government, for its part, has emphasized Iran's support for Hezbollah, a terrorist group that has been launching rocket attacks on Israel from the Lebanese border. In fact, it recently announced a critical decision against Hezbollah threats on the northern border lines. According to this decision, the Israeli army established a buffer zone on its side of the Lebanese border against trade with Hezbollah. As part of this buffer zone, the IDF isolated an area of up to 4 kilometers from its northern border with Lebanon. This decision was considered appropriate by many countries. Hezbollah's recent attacks have indeed threatened Israel's northern borders. Most recently, Israeli emergency services reported that 1 Israeli was killed and several others wounded in a Lebanese Hezbollah missile attack on a village on Israel's northern border. With clashes between Israel and Hamas and Hezbollah's terrorist activities from the northern borders, everyone is wondering, what will happen next? When will Israel start ground attacks? In the current situation, there are several ways Israel can respond: rescuing hostages, killing Hamas leaders, destroying Hamas's munitions capacity, regaining deterrence. In the current situation, Israel's options are limited. Israel has to rescue the hostages. The first choice is a blockade of Gaza. The second choice is extended attacks in conjunction with the blockade. The third option is a ground operation. According to many international intelligence sources, launching a ground operation in Gaza is the riskiest of the options. This is because a ground offensive would be costly, involve high military casualties, and have little chance of success. And most importantly, it would cause too many civilian casualties. The risks involved in a ground operation inevitably lead to the question, could it be that Hamas wants Israel to launch a ground operation? In that case, Israel would suffer greater casualties, and of course, civilian casualties would be politically beneficial for Hamas. In order to minimize these problems, Israel has not yet launched a ground offensive in Gaza. The IDF is assessing all risks. Even though the area is mined, the IDF has deployed demining vehicles to Gaza alongside tanks. Residents in Gaza are still being allowed to evacuate. In addition to the ground offensive and the blockade, Israel could simultaneously impose an extended offensive and a blockade. In this hybrid plan, the goal would be to dehumanize Gaza and to destroy the Hamas leadership and its weapons reserves. In addition, the process would be much more practical. It would also allow Israeli forces to prevent Hamas from using hidden tunnels in Gaza to carry out ambushes and suicide attacks by blowing up the passages. Thank you for tuning in. We want you to stay up to date with all the videos prepared by our team, including the latest developments and special reports on the war in Israel. You can subscribe to our channel, like our videos, and click the super thanks button below. See you in our next work.